Hello and welcome to Maths Table. In this lesson of Algebraic Manipulation and Formula, section 1.1, we are going to discuss the introduction to algebra and what are the basic parts of an algebraic expression. Now, before we go into more detail, we need to answer a few questions like what is algebra? Well, simply, algebra is a branch of mathematics in which we use different kinds of letters and symbols to represent those quantities that occur in the real world. Like, for example, we can represent area by the letter X, or we can represent volume as letter Y, etc., and so on. So, this is the basic meaning of algebra. Now, the second and the most important question is that why is algebra important? Many students nowadays say that algebra is very difficult to study. Why should we study it? Well, in simple words, algebra makes easier for you to perform everyday calculations. So actually, it's not difficult. It makes your life easy. Now, how this can be done? We can take a simple example. Like for example, like Ali wants to buy some pencils. He visits a stationery shop. Let's say four pencils for 5 rupees each, three erasers which cost 10 rupees each, and two sharpeners for 12 rupees each. Now, for all these items, how much total amount will Ali have to pay to the shopkeeper? Simply, the shopkeeper will perform these calculations. We know that he'll calculate the total price of pencils by multiplying the price of one pencil with the number of pencils he's interested in buying. So 5 times 4 gives you 20 rupees. This is the total price of pencils. And same goes for erasers like 30 rupees, sharpeners for 24 rupees, and so on. And at the end, he'll add up all these values to calculate the total bill, 74. So this is the amount which Ali will have to pay to the shopkeeper. Well, however, he can also perform this calculation in a single step. Like, for example, it's written like 5 times 4, the same calculation in the form of brackets and addition in a single step. We get the same answer like this. Now, over here, if we look closely, there are some quantities in this calculation like 4, 3, and 2, which are the number of items which Ali is buying. Now, for example, after Ali, some other customer visits the shop and he also needs to buy these three items. But will they always buy four pencils, three erasers, and two sharpeners? That's not always the case. If some other customer come, he may buy three pencils, two erasers, or three sharpeners, or even no sharpener. But these values 5, 10, and 12, these values are the price of one of each items. Like price of one pencil is 5 and so on. So we can see that these quantities which are written in green, 5, 10, and 12, these values do not change as a new customer comes. These values remain fixed as these are the price of one item. But the number of items which each customer is buying, this can change with each customer. So, based on this result, we conclude that in any calculation, there are some quantities which have fixed values, like in this case, the price of each of the items, they have fixed values. But the other quantities, like the number of items which each customer is buying, they are not fixed. So, it's very important. So, based on this conclusion, the shopkeeper can modify his calculation to make it a generalized calculation. Like, for example, he can substitute these values 4, 3, and 2, which can vary with each customer, by writing them as alphabetical letters like X, Y, and Z. So here X represents the number of pencils each customer will buy, Y represents the number of erasers, and similarly Z represents the number of sharpeners. And the constant values which do not change like 5, 10, and 12, they are written as it is. So this kind of formation, this kind of formulation which the shopkeeper has made, this will apply to every customer that will come. And this will make the calculation process for the shopkeeper much easier than instead of doing all these steps again and again. Now, this kind of formulation is simply known as algebraic expression. So now we have seen that algebra actually helps the shopkeeper in calculating the bill for each customer by making a generalized format, making a generalized expression to perform repeated calculations. So this is the use of algebra. We have seen that algebra will make your calculations quicker and much easier. Now, as we know the importance of algebra, we can now proceed to the complete detail of algebraic expression. Suppose that we have another expression just like before, like 2x plus 3y minus 16. Now we can study the individual parts of an algebraic expression one by one. First, let's start with the last number 16. This number, we can see that has a fixed value. 16 will always remain 16. So, as this value is fixed, we call this number as a constant because we know that 16 can never become 14 or 13 and so on. 16 will always remain 16. It will have a fixed value. That's why it's called constant. Now, these values which we have written like x and y, as we have discussed before, that x used to represent the number of pencils each customer was buying, and this value was not fixed. This could vary with each customer. So, as this value used to vary with each customer, this number is called variable. And similarly, this number 2, which is being multiplied, this was also a fixed value. This was used to represent, in the last example, as the price of each item. So, this number is just like 16, a constant number. But when this number, constant number, is multiplied with a variable, we do not necessarily call it a constant. Instead, we call it the coefficient of the variable. So in this case, we can say that 2 is a coefficient of x. Similarly, 3 is a coefficient of y. So this is the difference between constant and coefficient. If a number is written without any variable being multiplied, this is simply called constant. But whereas the other number is called the coefficient of the variable. So this is the individual parts. Now, what if we call this combined 2x the combined product, like 3y, for example? If you take 3y, which is the product of a coefficient, a constant, and a variable, this product is called a term. The term is 2x, 3y, and even 16 is a term. Now, why 16 is a term? Because we can assume that 16 is also being multiplied with a variable, but with a power 0. So it's not written with 16. Just like, for example, I can write 16 times x power 0. So x power 0 means nothing. We can simply write 1 in place of x power 0. So 16 into x power 0 means 16. So this is also a term, just like 2x and 3y. But the variable is not mentioned here. So total we have three terms here, 2x, 3y, and 16. And we can also see that each term is being separated by an operator sign, like plus and minus in this case. And so they are simply called operator signs or operation symbol. Now, what is the combined thing called? If the individual parts are called constant, variable, coefficient, term, operators, if they are combined together, this is called, as we have discussed before, an algebraic expression, this whole thing. So we can conclude that an algebraic expression is an expression containing variables just like x, y, numbers 2, 3, 16, and operation symbols like plus and minus. So this was all about the basics of algebra and what are the parts of an algebraic expression. I hope you have understood this video and got the point. For more info and more updated videos, please subscribe to our channel. And thank you very much for your valuable time.